Welcome back to The Book Stop. I'm so excited to talk about today's episode. Fair warning moving forward, this podcast does contain spoilers as we go over major events within the novels. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on Apple, Spotify, and Instagram at The Book Stop Podcast. And welcome back to another episode of The Book Stop. And today I have a lovely guest, Alex. So, Alex, what book did you bring for us to talk about today, and why did you bring it?
So I brought Perks of Being a Wallflower, and the biggest reason I brought it is it's a book that's in my life throughout the last, 10 or 15 years. I've read it here and there, and it's just something I thought I would revisit. Also, I thought it was perfect for this time of year. I think it's very autumnal, and it has this kind of feels to it. So it's just a book that I think brings a lot and means a lot to me, especially to, my inner kids of many ages. So
yeah. All right, to get us started, so Perks of Being a Wallflower, this book was written by Stephen Chbosky. I was reading a little bit about him. So he actually started the process of writing this book he was writing a different book in 1994. And then he started working on this one because of a certain line in it, and it's the one of, we accept the love that we think we deserve. And he was like, I want to base the book around that line. So he pulled that line out of the story and put it into this book. And another thing is that this book is kind of almost semi-autobiography. He had a lot of the same experiences, and the portion of him writing the letters as Charlie does throughout the story was something that he did in high school. It was like a writing exercise that he did. So a lot of this is pretty personable. So when you think about it that way, it kind of shapes the story a little bit differently. So we're going to hop into our first little game here.
Okay.
You are going to summarize the book in 30 seconds. But, twist, you have to do it as Charlie would have done one of the letters.
Dear friend, I'm going to be telling you a story about my first year of high school. I'm going to be telling you about my experiences, about who I am, and what I like and what I don't like, and what makes me sad and makes me happy, and all of these kind of new feelings that are coming up for me. And I'm writing because I don't have that many people to talk to, and I want to be open and be able to be myself. So I hope that you enjoy my letters. Love, Charlie.
Perfect. That honestly really sums it up. It's basically just him trying to survive high school and the experiences and the emotions that he does feel. But I'm going to summarize it really quick for anybody that doesn't know the story behind this. Set in the 90s, this novel follows a teenage boy that goes under the alias Charlie as we follow along through his freshman year of high school. He usually sticks to the sidelines of life, but after meeting two charismatic friends, he discovers the joy of friendship. However, as they prepare to move on and leave for college, Charlie's inner sadness and hidden past threatens to shatter his newfound confidence. But yeah, let's hop into it.
Sure.
So what is the favorite line that you brought? Favorite quote within the story that kind of stood out to you?
So my favorite quote, it's pretty far deep into the book. I want to say it's probably one of the last couple chapters. I know it's on page 200. And it's actually something that Sam says to Charlie. And that is, you can't just sit there and put everyone's lives ahead of yours and think that that counts as love. You just can't. You have to do things. The reason this quote stood out to me is because I think that for me personally, being a younger person in high school and growing up and getting to know people, I think that for some people, it's in their instinct to put other folks before themselves. And by doing that, you kind of forget about yourself. And I think that we're all capable of doing that at any point of our lives. And I think the reason I chose this was because when we're thinking about high school age kids, that's a pretty profound thing to say to another peer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, that's not what love looks like. It actually, because what I believe Sam is actually saying is, hey, you need to love yourself.
Yeah.
Like, let's put the emphasis on yourself and don't worry about me or other people and only being there for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's very relatable. I think that's very relatable to a lot of people. It's certainly relatable to me, and it hits hard. It's a pretty hard-hitting quote, and I liked it because I think, especially for Sam to say it, it's almost like she was saying it to herself. Like Charlie was a mirror to that of what she was saying to him. So I just really loved it. It's one that I feel like isn't as popular as some others from the book, but it's very impactful. So I really liked that one a lot.
Yeah, that's a solid quote. I like that too. Like, Charlie's he's a wallflower. Like, he kind of watches other people and does what he can to make them happy, but he doesn't really focus on his own happiness. And it's definitely something that's on the back burner for him. He's young, he's innocent, he doesn't really know these things that later on in life will affect him. So, yeah, that's a very good quote. My quote was also at the end of the book. I originally had brought that very popular quote because I think that one's also a good quote.
Great quote, yeah.
But I heard this one and I was like, you know what? That is solid. So my quote is, I guess we are who we are for a lot of reasons. Maybe we will never know most of them. But even if we can't choose where we come from, we can still choose where we go from there. Not only does it show great character growth for Charlie, it also shows, to the other kids that are reading this book that a lot of the times you can't really choose what happens in your past and what has affected you growing up. But, you do have these options now that you're getting older and you're in high school and you see the things and how they affect other people. You really get to choose how you move on in life and how shaping and making choices shapes the way you are. So I like this quote. I think it was a great end piece for Charlie. Gave a lot of hope, I guess, in the end that he will get better. But
yeah. And I agree with that. It shows a lot of character growth, especially when you look at the beginning of the book and how he speaks in his letters compared to at the end of the book where he's kind of seeing the forest for the trees now. And that's kind of why I lean towards something later on in the book, is because you do see so much character growth in just that year, and so much happens to him. And I think mostly part of that is his group of friends and everything he kind of observes, because he's an observer, but I agree. Good quote.
Thank you. All right, so let's hop into it. So what are some things you liked about the book? What are some things you didn't like?
So I think some of the things that I didn't like in the book, there's not much, but I think that certain things didn't age as well, right? Like, where this book is set in the 90s, it's, and we're in 2021. So I think just being a reader now and looking at it, there are certain things in the book that you think oh, that doesn't really oh, wow, I'm surprised. Just certain interactions with others at the school or peer groups and things like that. I think a lot of the things that I didn't like about the book kind of stem from personal things, but not really what was written by the author, I guess, per se, So there's certain ways that things are said where maybe they're a little more insensitive, right? So when we're talking about mental health or we're talking about some of the traumatic events that Charlie went through, I think that they're with purpose, very blunt, but reading it now as opposed to reading it many years ago, it was oh wow, this is a little blunt, So I think in a way it was just more it wasn't I didn't like it, but it was a little more shocking, oh, this is presented in such a here it is way. Which makes me a little uncomfortable, right? So it's not so much that I don't like it, but it's oh, that's a little uncomfortable as, reading that as an adult and thinking of these kids going through these things or saying these things.
Yeah, it definitely stands out more. And you're oh, shoot, okay. Definitely didn't age well. For example, how much time he spends with Bill out of school.
Right.
His teacher, English teacher,
yes. Yeah.
He literally was I'm going to go hang out with Bill and his wife after school, and then goes and just hangs out in his apartment, and has dinner. Like, that's something that you wouldn't see nowadays without thinking that's a bit sus.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's really like most of what it is it's just, it is written in that time. And like, let's face it, the things in 1990s, very different than today. Absolutely. But like, they kind of jump out at you off the page and you're like, what? That's kind of strange. Or like, that seems a little wrong, or whatever your predisposed ideas are of how things are now. But it also, I think, that highlights in a way kind of the innocence of kids and what they think might be appropriate or not appropriate, or healthy or not healthy, or good or bad, or however they label things. So, when you're reading that book, there's a lot of looking at what things are like today. I think there's a lot of room for kind of seeing a contrast and compare of like, okay, so like maybe this is what like a kid was going through in the 1990s in high school, but today things are very different than it was then. But things I did like in the book, I really did love the format, and that it was done in letters, and that we don't really know who the letters are to, and we don't really know who gave Charlie the idea to write letters, we
don't even know who Charlie is.
We don't even know who he is. Yeah. So it's completely anonymous. We know a couple things about it. And I think that one of the things I really do love about the book is it really gives me a sense of nostalgia for like what it was like when I was in high school. Like, they go to football games, and it's October, and there's homecoming, and they go to the diner after the game. And those are things that I did. So even though it wasn't in the 90s, it was later on, it was still something that was relatable to me. So I think every time I went back and read the book, when I was a little bit older, it feels nostalgic in a way where you're like, there's something really special about being in high school, especially, Charlie's a freshman in high school when we're reading this book, and just those experience, that possibility of like, what could happen to me in these 4 years. And I know what's happened to me before, but all of these opportunities to grow, make friends, do these different things, and just figure out who you are as a person, And I do also really like the blunt honesty of what Charlie writes to us, because boy, is he blunt and honest. I mean, he'll just give it to you straight and doesn't really think about how it's gonna come off in a way.
Yeah.
It's very quick, and this happened and this happened, and there's usually either very little emotion to the writing, or there might be a lot, depending on what affects him. So I do like that we can see differences there in the timeline, that there's certain things like, okay, he doesn't really talk about and go into depth about and just kind of throws it on the page. And then there's other things where he's very involved in, and he gives us the entire history, story, everything. So I liked that you could see what really mattered to him and what really didn't. It's interesting to see the things that he's presenting that do really matter to him, and maybe the things that don't, where as a reader you think, maybe he should care about that more, or maybe like, oh, that is important, but he's not putting that emphasis on it.
I actually want to go back to what you were saying about Charlie. My theory is that I think Charlie might be on like the autistic spectrum a little bit.
I agree.
He doesn't read social cues very well, and he is very blunt, and he's very, very honest about things, and not necessarily just in his writing, but talking to people.
Right, exactly.
So I could definitely see him being somewhere on the spectrum, but that was just one thing I noticed when I was reading it. Teenager that's in high school that isn't around people a lot, I feel like wouldn't react this way to other people if they were able to read the social cues as average teenager would. So.
Right, but Charlie's different, and I think that's the thing is we have that established for us very early on, that Charlie is different in some way, and like I absolutely agree with that. There's those like kind of classical signs as far as socializing and social cues that like he just doesn't get, and I didn't really notice that up until this read. When you first read it, maybe as a younger person, or let's say someone in middle school is reading it, they're 11 or 12, their perception of Charlie may be like, oh, this is just a kid that's really nervous and doesn't know how to make friends, or is sad, or has these situations. But when you look at it kind of as an adult, you think, Yeah, there's certain things that are missing there. And it's interesting because throughout at least the beginning of the book, he knows that he's different and he has his reasons in his head, but it takes him to be around like his friends like Patrick and Sam to kind of get him out of that shell. But if it might have been two different friends and not them with their type of character, he may have not. He needed friends who were able to see past that bluntness and that awkwardness and see like, wow, this is someone who's really interesting and special and different. And I think like that's really illustrated for us throughout, is that this is someone who is not like everyone else.
Yeah. It helps that Sam and Patrick are also very blunt people and they're very honest with each other. So
like I said, I don't have very many dislikes. I kind of see it for like what it is. I think overall things that I don't like aren't necessarily I don't like them, but they're like, whoa, that's a little uncomfortable as an adult reading that. Or you think about it in real life, right? And you think like, if I had a kid one day and they were like this, you read that and you're like, oh gosh, it's just a different perspective. But be lying if I said that I didn't have a little bit of a bias towards loving the book.
I'll start with my likes first. I do like the way that the story is written. I like the letters. It makes me see like, okay, what is Charlie doing between those letters? Like, what is his life going on during those times? And also, what is Charlie like now? Because I want to see how he is like after high school and going into college, and I want to see more of his life. So I like the suspense almost that you get, because you're like, when's the next letter? I really paid attention to like the time stamps for each letter, and I was like, oh, it's only been a day, so not a lot. But then when it's weeks, I'm like, oh, what happened?
Right.
So I found it builds suspense having the timestamps. I also liked the background of his family, how detailed it was, because normally characters, they don't really go much into like the family history and family detail, but I think that because all he really had was his family, I liked the emphasis on some things, like his grandpa, for example. Like, right. I love the way that he kind of went in and really described a lot of stuff. So I like that. I liked the character development within Charlie and the other characters as well. But so the things I didn't like, I think that there was a little bit too much drama in it. What I mean by that is that it was this thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And I know the public view of this book, I was reading that a lot of people kind of say that statement as well. Like, have you ever seen The Fosters? The TV show, The Fosters? I think, yeah, I have. It kind of reminds me of that, where it's like, as soon as they've resolved something, they're immediately another thing. Into another thing. Or there's multiple things at once. And I personally found it hard to, like, keep up with all of it. I'm just going to throw a trigger warning in here now before we even go farther. Like, there is mention of suicide and sexual assault and stuff like this in the story, but there is a lot of hidden stuff in there that you kind of have to dig through, the way the story with his aunt and stuff. You have to, like, dig through his past a lot to pick up on it. And I like the subtlety of that, but when it's like the thing with Sam and the way that she was assaulted when she was younger, and then immediately jumps into his sister having an abortion, and then immediately jumping into Brad and Patrick. It's like,
we're getting every teenage issue right away. Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's like an episode of The Fosters to me. So I didn't love that. I think I would have dialed back maybe a couple of those scenarios, but I really like the characters in the story. That was my favorite part. A lot of them were very detailed, and they were very, I love background, so I loved listening about all the different kind of stuff on each character. So
yeah, I agree.
All right, so we're gonna hop into our favorite character. So who did you say in the story is your favorite?
So my favorite character is Patrick.
Solid.
I feel like he could be a fan favorite. I think the reason he's my favorite character is because, so like you're just saying, right? So we got a lot of like drama one after the other. If we look at Patrick, like, he's not the star of our story. He has some things going on with him, right? The situation with Brad, the fact that, his sexuality isn't exactly open and comfortable. He doesn't really get to show up all the time as who he is exactly. But that being said, I think Patrick is one of the strongest characters in the book. I think that Patrick kind of plays this part not only for Charlie, but for Sam and for others in their friend group, of just kind of having this I got everybody mentality.
It's like the mom of the group.
Yeah, he's very nurturing, he's very understanding. He really is there to listen, you know, and I think what's interesting about him is even though he has his own drama going on, his own pains, his own things that he's bringing to the table, he will always put his friends first. And I think that's really relatable for a lot of people, you know. That's why he's my favorite character, because when you read any book, you're kind of like, okay, where would I fit in this world, right? Mm-hmm. And I see myself as being that, like, Patrick-esque character of, like, don't worry about my stuff. I have my own thing, but, like, I want to be there for you. I want to be there for the group. And I know another reason he's my favorite is he does have moments where he breaks down and where he is vulnerable, especially with Charlie. And I think their relationship as friends is just kind of very telling about who Patrick really is, and that, you know, he does act as that maternal, nurturing person for Charlie, Sam, others in the group, but at the end of the day, he has his own stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think that he's just incredibly relatable. He wants to keep the peace. He wants to make everybody entertained. I think a lot of us are like that. We want things to be going okay. And, you know, we'll kind of do anything to get a laugh. We'll kind of do anything to lighten the mood, to make people's day, or to stick up for our friends. And that's mm-hmm. the thing is, he's just such a rich character. And even though we don't have, like, I guess, a ton of background on him, but I think for, like, some of the main characters, he doesn't have as much, and I think that's why I'm drawn to him, because I want to know more about Patrick. I want to know what's happening in college, who he becomes, the fact that, like, he is in Rocky Horror Picture Show, and he is the show, right? Like, he shows up as this person who is bubbly and loud and entertaining and silly, but where's that vulnerability? And we see that. And I think it's nice because I don't think in every character in Perks we see the whole picture. And I think with Patrick we see the whole picture, and it's pretty relatable. But yeah, he's just my favorite. I just think he's so entertaining, and he just has so much. There's so much there that, like, we don't really get to see. Like, I think he could have his own book, you know? Like, I think, absolutely. You know, his character could have so much more to say. Like, I want to know about his past. I want to know more about what he was like in middle school, like Charlie or his family. You know, we know a little bit, but not a lot. But no, I just love him. He's my favorite. Yeah,
you honestly, like, summarized it perfectly. Patrick's also my favorite.
Gotcha. I had a feeling he might be.
Yeah. And you said that he wasn't the main character, but I would say he's probably is. Because he has that main character vibe where he makes it about himself, and he shone through a lot of Charlie's letters, and he's a very strong character, but he also has those chapters where he isn't a strong character, and we get to see that through Charlie when after the breakup with Brad, and he has those I would say adventures with Charlie where he just spends time with him, and then we get to see him kind of break apart a little bit, mm-hmm. and it shows that vulnerability, but then by the end of the story he kind of picks himself back up and he's stronger for it. So I love Patrick ever since, like, the second you see him and, you know, he's introduced as literally nothing. Mm-hmm. Like, they called him, what did they call him? Patty or something?
Yeah,
and he's
Patty.
Like, either call me Patrick or call me nothing. And then everyone's like, okay, I'm going to call you nothing then. And he rolled with it. He owned that. Like, He wasn't the type of person that will let you beat up on him. He sticks up for himself as much as his friends, and he'll roll with the punches. If you want to call him nothing, guess what? He's a name tag. This is nothing. He doesn't care. So, but I do like that broken parts towards the end where he kind of, you see through his shield, and you get to see him being more vulnerable. So, but yeah, you summarized it perfectly. Like, I really love Patrick.
He's just so charismatic. He's just got so much to him, mm-hmm. and he makes you interested, you know?
Yeah. I loved hearing his, like, background, and his relationship with Brad was really sad, but I think it shaped who he is, and it made him more safe with himself, and that he was willing to accept himself a little bit more, especially towards the end when he goes off to college and he says, you know, this is a new beginning for me. And I think that was a really good role model for Charlie and Sam as well, as she grows up, that he gets to see like these people who are seniors are moving on with their life and leaving freshman Charlie behind. But it was a good role model showing like it does get better and there is a life outside of these walls type deal. Right. So yeah, I really liked Patrick as well.
Yeah, he's just a great character all around.
So great.
Yeah.
Honestly, he deserves a spinoff.
Yeah, no, I really think that. And as I was finishing the book this last read, I found myself thinking that, like, I want to know more about what happens with him. Like, give me a book about his college years. I want to see what's going, he's so entertaining. And one thing that can be said about Patrick, I feel like everybody has that person in their life at some point or another, whether it's high school or college or earlier on. There's always kind of that friend who's got that tough shell on the outside and who's funny and maybe a little bit crude and silly and ready to go to bat for his friends. But then once you get through that shell, there's actually some really delicate, soft, and, in a way, I think, hurt. There's pain there. And I think that he's just a great representation of really kind of the human condition, especially at that age.
He's a thick-skinned person. He's he knows what he wants and he knows what to say. But deep down, he's really understanding himself as all the other characters are. He doesn't really know who he is yet.
Right.
So, yeah, I love his I love that each one kind of get their own coming-of-age story. Like, Sam gets her own story with Craig, and Patrick with Brad, and then Charlie with Mary Beth. Like, they each get their own relationship that they kind of learn within it that, what they want from a relationship, as well as who they are. So I like that we get to kind of see that with each different character, and that each relationship is different.
Right.
Can we talk about the abundance of drug use in this story?
Boy, oh boy.
It's crazy. So, reminder, Charlie's only 15, and this guy has experience with so many drugs. And a lot of it's pretty normal. Like, obviously there's, like, pot and stuff in it. But I found the statement where he's like, and then I woke up the next morning, I'm never going to try LSD again, or something like that. And I was just like, what's happening? So.
Yeah. And then I think that's the thing, too, is it's interesting, right? Okay, we have teenagers. Teenagers are going to experience things. They're going to try different things. They're going to do different things. Like, drugs are a fact of life. They're out there. They've been out there since the beginning of humans and, finding something in the forest that alters our consciousness. But boy, yeah, as like a 15-year-old boy, Charlie goes full force into this high school experience. I think in that, like, his freshman year of high school, like, he's really growing up fast, right? Because he, at least in the beginning, he kind of looks at his other peers who are all freshmen, who he was in middle school with and stuff like that. And what's interesting, I think, is he was never really able to relate to those people, right? Charlie's young, and we get that he is young, he is inexperienced.
He's very innocent,
not really sure what's going on. And I think, when we're talking about the drug use, kind of like, well, of course he's going to try anything. Like, he is so innocent, and he is reaching so hard for meaning in things, right? Like, almost everything he talks about is set in such a heavy poetic way. So I think in that, part of me even thinks perhaps it's not so much the escape of drug use that he like wants to try drugs or pot or whatever, or when he does LSD, it's more like, okay, what does this bring? What's gonna happen if I do this, right? Because I feel like when we look at Charlie, it's kind of more, is this action gonna get this result? Kind of a thing, but boy, yeah, is there a lot of drug use. I mean, we full force, like, everybody's smoking pot or eating pot brownies, and I think a lot of them are smoking cigarettes. And I believe Charlie, they chain smokes at Big Boy. At the Big Boy. I think it's very relatable as a teenager. I think that silly to think that teenagers aren't going to try things, and I also think that, you know, if we look at the time period this is in, very of the times, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, even when we look at smoking cigarettes, right? Like when we look at kids now who are 15, 16, 17, probably not smoking cigarettes, they're vaping, right? So like,
yeah.
you know, that's the thing, is it kind of follows these trends, you know? I mean, even when you look at experience of his with LSD, at some point, if there's an opportunity to alter your consciousness as a young person, chances are, even if you're scared to do it, you're probably going to try it. That being said, you know, one of the things that I actually had written down in my notes is that how Charlie's fairly casual drug use, you know, I mean, with the exception of when him and Patrick are really getting close and they're smoking pot together and drinking and whatnot. I think that for a very sensitive, seemingly, I hate to use the word abnormal, but really just using it as a word, you know, no assumption, you know, kind of an abnormal kid, I think that the drug use for him almost leads him to this place of breaking. So this is a kid who's very sensitive, who is very black and white a lot of the times, right? It's either this or it's that. It's either pain or pleasure, or this or that. So I think throughout the book, you know, we see how he perceives those things, right? But he's never scared. And that's the one thing, is I feel like whenever he's approached with any of it early on in the book, he goes to the party after the game and he has a brownie, and it's a pot brownie, and he doesn't know it. And he gets a little scared at first, but then he kind of realizes he's with these people that care about him, that they're including him, right? Like they're laughing at him because like he's high from the pot brownie.
Talking about his milkshake.
Right, talking about his milkshake, but he's being him, and those kids around him can see that. I think in a way, you know, the drug use for Charlie it helps him grow. It really helps him grow, for better or for worse. But I think in the end, you know, it gives him a lot of perspective. And he's so matter of fact about things. The LSD situation with him taking LSD could have been pretty traumatic, right? I mean, things don't turn out great, but he writes us and is like, I'm never doing that again. And it's like that. And then that's just done. Never mentioned again, right? So interesting what he feels is the big deals.
For example, is like when all of his friends start leaving him. The first time was when they had that truth and dare. He was dared to kiss the prettiest girl in the room, and instead of kissing his girlfriend at the time, he kissed Sam, because he's, you know, absolutely in love with Sam, but she's too old, and she specifically said, like, don't feel that way about me. So after the friend group kind of split apart and it was just him alone, that was the first time where he felt alone. So he went to drugs a lot and was smoking a lot of pot, because it was his way of feeling something again, feeling happy again. Right. So I feel like he did have those negative moments where the drugs kind of pushed him to feel something, but he was kind of abusing it in that way where he was lonely and clearly very depressed. It was like really affecting him. So having those senses of wanting to feel something again, but he kept saying, my favorite line he kept saying was like, I gotta stop smoking so much pot. The entire story. So, but once he became friends, like they made up, he didn't do it as much anymore. So.
Right, yeah, and I think in that, like, it's very obvious that, okay, like, you're smoking a lot of pot because you kind of don't want to deal with those feelings, right? Mm-hmm. That's very common. It's pretty interesting that, like, Charlie is 15 until he turns 16, but he's 15 when he starts doing these things. Yeah, which, you know, thinking about it, when you're 15, you think you're grown up. You just do. Mm-hmm. When you're 15 through your whole life, you think you're more grown up than you are. And I think what's funny about Charlie is kind of his lack of awareness about his age and, like, where that makes him fit or where he should fit because of that. You know, I do think it's interesting that he ends up with this group of friends who are all seniors, you know, when he has his sister who's also a senior who is just embarrassed of him or thinks he's very weird or strange or in some cases a pervert, you know, depending on situations happening. That's another thing that can be said is if he's hanging out with these kids that are older, more experienced and using drugs, then of course he's going to want to feel included, especially as someone like him who's always felt on the outskirts of things. Yeah, there's a lot of drug use in this book for the age of them, yes.
That kind of brings me to the next point is like there's a lot of drug use, there's a lot of foul language, there's a lot of sexual things that happen in this book. So people will say that there should be like an age restriction on it. That we read it when we were younger, but nowadays people are saying like you need to be 18 to read this book, which I don't know. I don't think that you need to be 18 to read this book. I mean, it's just a fictionalized story, so kids see much worse than that on TV every single day. I feel like Charlie is a good enough role model that if you were to read this book and experience the way that he did, you kind of see the positive and negatives of all of it.
Sure.
Obviously more negatives than positives, but you get to see how he kind of reacts to the things that's happened to him. So I don't know. I just wanted to hear your thoughts about like, do you think they should put an age restriction on it?
I absolutely agree with you, Jen. I do not think there should be an age restriction really on any books, especially this one, because I feel like this book is very honest. Now, okay, of course, this is set in the 1990s, you know, and things are different. It's 2021. Things are different. Things are a little hot and heavy out there. Their opinions are strong, right? But the thing is that the book it's very honest about things that teenagers go through, things that everybody goes through. And I think to deny that to kids of a certain age, whether they're 12, 13, whatever, I think it's a very, like, open and honest picture of how things can and might look. Of course, it's a book, it's a novel, it's fiction, but it's very honest, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with being honest about what that experience can look like for a young person. Exactly. I mean, if anything, I think in a way it would be beneficial to read this book. I know that it was beneficial for me to read this book. It kind of, for me reading it, I think I read it first at like 12 years old. So for me reading it, I didn't catch everything in the book like I do now, right? So there were certain things that I caught. The sexual assault, things like that, obviously, that were a little more obvious, but there are these like undertones of things that you don't always catch to begin with, you know, because when you're a 12-year-old, your brain's focused on other things. You're not 30 years old. You're not reading things the same way.
You're caring about, like, who does Charlie end up with?
Right, exactly.
What's gonna happen with his sister and brother? Like, you care about, like, the more personable things.
Exactly. But even reading the chapter where Charlie's sister needs his help, I think that's a very real and honest thing that could happen. It could happen to a very young person. It could happen to a little bit older person. But I think depriving that reality of like, yeah, this is a fictionalized book, but like this stuff happens all the time, you know. I think that this book could be very helpful to certain kids or teenagers, depending on who they are, right? No, you do not have to be 18 to read this book. I think if anything, I'm not a parent myself, so I can't speak on it too much, but you know, if I had a younger teenager, I would not have a problem reading this. The only thing is like, hey, if you have any questions, or hey, maybe this is a little intense, this is a story. It doesn't mean it's going to be like this in real life, but this is a little snapshot of like what it was like then, or what it was like for, you know, our writer in a way, you know. But no, I absolutely don't think that. I read it at a young age. I had friends that read it, especially with how it ends. I think it ends on a really hopeful and positive note, and it's very honest. And I just believe that honesty is really important for young people. It's really important to be honest and open, so they know, you know, they know what it could be like to be in a situation where there's sexual assault. They know what it might be like in a situation where there are drugs, and they also know that there's autonomous choice there. So, you know, I feel like Charlie says yes to a lot, right, in the book. He says yes to most things because he wants to be liked. He wants to be a part of that. He doesn't always want to be the wallflower, right? For a younger person reading this, it's a good way to see, like, I don't have to say yes to everything, or I can be friends with these people without doing drugs or without being sexually active or whatever it is. I think it just gives like a nice snapshot of like, this could be an experience that maybe a friend of yours might have a similar thing.
Yeah.
More than anything, it's very honest. And no, I absolutely agree with you. Absolutely. I could go on forever.
Yeah,
I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, like going back to what you were saying about the honesty thing, and that's a huge plot in the story about being honest. Charlie is honest. He's a very blunt and honest person. But Sam kind of sits down with him. She's like, you're a great person, and you're going to learn a lot of things in the next few years of high school. But if you want to make it, you need to be more honest with yourself.
Right.
And I feel like that's a great learning curve for anybody that's reading it, that obviously be honest with other people that you care about in life. Hey, you have to step up and be there for yourself. Be honest and accept what's happening to you, and what you gotta kind of own up to it and think, how is this going to affect me in the long term? And how am I going to shape this? Kind of like the quote that I brought, like, things happened to me in my past. How am I going to make it better for myself in the future?
Yeah,
so,
I absolutely agree with you.
But yeah, so we're going to jump into favorite relationship now. So who did you say is your favorite relationship in the story?
So it probably won't be a surprise to you. Charlie and Patrick. It's such an interesting friendship, right? Because it's like this platonic love that they really have for each other. It's this...
Minus the kissing.
Minus the kissing, right? So, and that's the thing, is like, there's a kiss that happens. And more than anything, what you get from that is like, okay, Patrick is hurting. And actually, Charlie had the wherewithal to know that Patrick was hurting, you know? And I think that's what separates their relationship from Charlie and Sam's relationship. Charlie and Patrick, there's just kind of Patrick being like, taking him under his wing at first and just being like, I got you. You're not alone. Like, we understand you. We think you're super cool and funny and unique or whatever it is. But what I love about the relationship is that as the book goes on, as we see it flip-flop to where Charlie is actually there for Patrick. And in a healthy way, I think, for the most part. Even when they do have that awkward kind of kiss, Charlie sees it as Patrick's really sad and Patrick really needs support and really needs a friend. And I think that to kind of get through that, I mean, really, who else would go through that situation but Charlie and still be like, whoa, are you okay? Like, I love you. You're my friend. So their relationship is my favorite just because you do see so much growth in both characters from that relationship. They share so much with each other. I think Patrick, for him, Charlie is a safe space for him to be truly honest, right? Because he discloses pretty much everything about Brad, and he tells Charlie things that he doesn't tell Sam or he hasn't disclosed to their friend group, because he knows that Charlie's not going to judge him for that. If anything, Charlie will be empathetic and just want to be there. And I think that their relationship is my favorite because even though Charlie and Sam have their friendship at the end and whatever may come, their relationship is the one that I could see going on past high school, past college, and being those people that like will always have that time and always have that understanding where they could pick up the phone and explain some situation that's going on and have it be there. You know what I mean? So I loved their relationship because it's the one that I could really see continuing.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the first like real connection was Christmas for them.
Right.
When they had each other for Secret Santa, and Charlie, you know, he makes the mixtape for him, and then Patrick gets him the suit because he says all great writers have a suit. So I think those were very like good connection points for them where they kind of understood each other a little bit better. And I just love that scene so much.
I know.
I love the Christmas scene so much.
It's so warm, and it just like it gives you the warm and fuzzies. It really does, because it's like I think you can put yourself in those shoes and like feel that, you know, whether it's a group of friends or family, but just that feeling of like being accepted and having this joyous moment, this fun, you know, that there's a lot of turmoil in this book. So I think when we get to the Christmas party and we finish off with the Secret Santa, it's kind of just this really great culmination where like everybody's getting along, nobody's really arguing, they're drinking brandy, they're feeling older, they're, you know, it's like this very special moment. And yeah, no, I agree. I love that they're each other's Secret Santa. And I think it really connects them. And I think it shows Charlie that Patrick really understands Charlie.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know that up until that point. Very moving to him that Patrick gifted him all the things he did.
Did you happen to listen to the mixtape?
I have, yes.
That was fire. I'm not gonna lie. It was a good mixtape.
I have it. I currently have it on my Spotify, and it's great. I think it's great.
It's a good solid.
It is a solid playlist. Fun fact: the first time I think I read the book, I was so interested in hearing those songs because a lot of them I hadn't heard before because I was younger. Ones I didn't connect. I think I made myself a mix CD and listened to it back then, and it was great then, and you know, however many years later, it's great now, so I highly recommend it.
If you go on Spotify, just look up Patrick's mixtape. It will pop up. So I actually brought a different
I can't wait to hear.
Relationship. Obviously, I love Patrick and Charlie, and I think Sam and Charlie also had a very interesting one. But the one that I brought that I found most intriguing was Bill and Charlie. We already stated that Bill was his teacher. The coming to his apartment aside, he was a big motivator for Charlie. He gave him all those books to pretty much keep him busy, and like he learned experiences through the books and writing the papers. So I think he was a great motivator. He was also one of the first people that noticed the depression that Charlie was feeling, especially after the friend group kind of broke up the first time. But he's also a great role model for him. I think he showed Charlie that, you know, you don't always have to follow a certain path. Like, you can do what you want and still be happy. So I really like Bill and Charlie. I think it was a bit weird that he went to his apartment all the time, but I think that he was a great role model for him and motivated him a lot.
Right, I agree. So. I think so too. You know, and I think it can be said that, like, of course, the book is set in a different time. And I think Bill was pretty young for a teacher. So I guess we can stretch our imagination and be like, that might make sense then. Still a little strange to read. I thought Bill had a huge impact on Charlie and really kind of showed him his self-worth. And the fact that, hey, like, you are a smart kid. You see things that not everybody sees. Bill's not the only one that says that. His friends say that. That comes up a lot of, like, Charlie is special. There's something different about Charlie. There's something unique about him enough to where his teacher is going to spend more time with him, give him books to read, and occupy him so that he can grow and feel connected to things. And I think Bill's book choices are interesting for Charlie too. Yes. Bill is giving Charlie books that he knows will be really impactful to him. So I think there's like a lot of compassion and care there, you know, and maybe it's that Bill was similar when he was younger, you know, we don't know. And I think that's what's interesting is the things that we don't know about the characters, but we can kind of imagine. So I love that relationship too. Yeah.
Speaking of relationship, we didn't really talk about it a ton, but I want to talk about like Sam and Charlie.
Sure.
So Charlie first sees Sam, and he says that Sam's the most prettiest girl he's ever met. Sam is Patrick's stepsister. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he met Sam through Patrick, and the entire story he kind of simps for Sam, I will say.
Yes, like I agree. That's a great word for it.
Yeah, he slowly falls in love with her, and at the very beginning, Sam's like, listen, Charlie, like, you had this weird dream about me, and that's okay, that's normal, but you're way too young for me, and I respect that, you know. She set boundaries with him, and she said, don't feel that way for me because I'm going to be gone by the end of the year. I don't want a crush. I don't want anybody to crush on me. I want somebody to fall in love with, type deal. So she specifically said, like, don't pursue me in any way. But towards the end of the book, she slowly falls in love with Charlie. The whole thing with Craig happens. He cheats on her multiple times, and Charlie is there to be her shoulder to cry on. Right. And Sam's like, why did you never pursue me? And Charlie's like, you told me not to.
Right.
And Sam's just like, Charlie, you need to do what makes you happy. Like, you need to stop worrying about what other people think. I will personally say I don't love Sam and Charlie's relationship because I feel like Sam manipulates a big word, but I feel like she kind of plays with emotions a lot.
I agree. Yes. Yeah. And I feel the same way as you do. I don't love that they're kind of together, you know, in a way at the end.
Yeah.
Because they are, but they aren't, right? Like, she's going to college, he's staying there, so, like, we don't know what happens. But I agree. I wouldn't use the word manipulation, but I think what's really obvious is that Sam's immature herself. You know, if we look at her relationship with Craig and how that went, and then she's kind of taking these things back. So, like, she's still trying to figure out who she is when it comes to relationships, romantic or otherwise. Sadly, I think that Charlie's kind of just in the way of that, and he kind of just gets the brunt of it, really. Because, like you said, in the beginning, she did, like, I don't want to crush, I don't want you to like me, I don't want you to be attracted, like, you know, it's okay if you are, but no. And it kind of makes me think outside of the book, well, how's it gonna be when she is in college? Like, is she going to care about Charlie? Is she gonna want to, you know, she's in college. So I think that that's a very immature part of her character. I think that we could have a book for Sam too, just with everybody really could. But I agree, I don't love their relationship. I think that I probably would have enjoyed it more if it were just more of a crush, and maybe Charlie at the end started talking to another girl, maybe closer to his age. You know what I mean? Something that might have been more realistic is what I would have preferred. Because I agree, I just don't see that, especially when we look at Sam's behavior of, like, kind of flipping from no, don't like me, and then hey, do what you want. But that's kind of her saying, what I said before, I didn't mean, and now I want it this way. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I respect that she sets boundaries with him at the beginning. At the end, she literally is like, we can be together. And Charlie's like, yes, finally, like, I'm in love with you, I want to be with you. And then she goes to college. Yeah, it's in the same college that his brother goes to, so he could visit them, but it's not realistic. He's not gonna be able to with school and stuff, so I thought it was pretty romanticized. Yes. So, that's kind of where I stand with it. I don't love it. Like I said, I wish he could have, like, met someone else. Maybe a boy, even. That would have been more risque, but I didn't love them. And it's not that she took advantage of him, but she knew how Charlie was. Yet, she still kissed him. And that's another thing that you're like, in the chapter where she gives him his first kiss. Yeah. Well, it's also a little bit... Yeah, it's like, where are your boundaries now? What's the point in having boundaries if you're not going to hold them? Now, at the same time, very high school girl. She says, on Christmas, she gives him the typewriter, and she tells Charlie about her past and how her first kiss was with her dad's older friend, and she says to Charlie, like, I want your first kiss to be somebody that actually loves you. So she didn't really think about Charlie's emotions and how he's going to be affected by it. She kind of just did what she wanted because of her past. So I didn't love that scene as well. I didn't love it, but could be pretty realistic for two teenagers, really. Teenagers are pretty selfish, and they kind of work off what's best for them or what feels good to them. So I thought it was kind of an honest rendition of what might happen. But no, I don't love their relationship. No, I totally agree with you. All right, so we're gonna hop into our little game here. Okay. So speaking of that mixtape that Patrick got for Christmas, can you remember which order these songs went? I think so. Okay, so whenever you're ready, just start listening. Okay. Asleep. Yep, so it starts with Asleep. Vapor Trail. Yep, Vapor Trail. Whiter Shade of Pale. Not quite. The next one would be Scarborn Fair. Oh, yes. Yes. But then Whiter Shade of Pale? Yep, and then that one. Time of No Reply. Blackbird? Not Blackbird, it's Dear Prudence. That was the one I was gonna say. Alright, so Dear Prudence, MLK? No. Gypsy. Gypsy, which is a great song, by the way. Daydream? Daydream, yep. Dusk? Dusk, yep. Oh, Landslide. Nope, it's MLK. MLK. It's not over yet, though. Nope, there's 3 more. Okay. Blackbird. Yep, Blackbird. Blackbird. Landslide. Landslide, which is an amazing song. An amazing I love that song so much. What, we have 2 more? Or 1 more? 1 more. Asleep.
Yep, he repeats a sleep in the beginning and the end, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I didn't do too bad.
Pretty
Not
good.
Too bad. I got most of them.
Such a great mixtape. It's gonna be on repeat for a while because I really liked it.
I think it's great for this time of year too.
Yeah, it gives that 90 vibe. Sure.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
So the next thing we're going to do is missed opportunities, right? Is there anything within the story you would have changed, would have done differently? It's completely your opinion.
One thing that I may have elaborated on is Charlie's relationship with his mom. I think that we got to see kind of a view of what their relationship was like, but I almost wanted more dialogue between the two of them than what we got. I think that kind of get a snapshot of like what Charlie's family life is like, what mom and dad are like, and how they kind of are with each other and how they are with the kids. And I think that we almost get the impression that Charlie's mom is kind of similar to him, right? A little quiet, a little sensitive, tries to do the right things, whatever, cares for her kids, but doesn't speak up a lot for herself, doesn't really give her opinion when it comes to things with the kids or the family or holidays, stuff like that. I wish that we would have gotten more dialogue between the two of them. I think there was a lot of things that I think that he could have heard from his mom that he needed to hear. I just wish we got more of like a look at their relationship and what mom went through and why she was the way she was, because we know a little bit, right? Because we learn about her father, Charlie's grandpa, and we learn about her sister, of course, but we don't know a lot about mom and what happened to mom and her feelings as much. We get a little bit of a view, but I wish that Charlie and his mom could have had dialogue together, maybe near the end of the book, where more understanding about, more conversation about mental health. I think that Charlie's parents were presented as these kind of like brush things under the rug type of people when they were talking about when Charlie was having a hard time. They weren't really talking about it, right? They were kind of just like, it's happening again. It's happening again. And I wish that there could have been more like, okay, dialogue, like you're going through a hard time. There wasn't a lot of like talking with parent and child. There wasn't a lot of communication. And I wish that could have been like a resolution at the end of the book. I think it would have made me feel a little better about it, personally, you know, and maybe that's just because of my own personal experience in my life, but I think that he wanted approval from his family, and I think that it would have helped him to get verbal confirmation of that. So that's one thing. And then really like the only other thing I really would have changed is Charlie and Sam at the end, like we talked about. I just thought it was pretty unrealistic. I wish like if I were to write the book, I would have had Charlie meet another girl and they could just be friends or start off as friends, and then we kind of leave the book not really knowing, but him and Sam are good, him and Patrick are good, and they're always going to be friends, but maybe Charlie has his own path, his own opportunities to fall in love or make new friends or even understand his sexuality. So I didn't love that, but those are really the only two things I would have tweaked, I guess.
I definitely agree with the ending. I think it doesn't have to be necessarily we need a whole established thing. It could have been a cliffhanger type deal. You know, he met someone new, boy or girl, and it could have been a friendship. It could have been a relationship. I didn't like that he was kind of just alone again at the end. It felt like there was no real progression because the friends that he did make were gone. I didn't love the abundance of drama that was in there, so I would pull maybe a couple of things out or spread them out a little bit more.
Sure.
I feel like a lot of it was at the beginning. There was a little bit in the middle and then some at the end. I would have spread it out a little bit more. And I would have liked a little bit more with his brother. I think he mostly focused on like his sister, who he saw a lot more obviously than his brother, but we only really get to see his brother during holidays, so maybe a phone call every once in a while, or explain why we're not seeing his brother a lot.
Right.
Because it never said that they had like a bad relationship or anything. So I would have liked explain that a little bit more or draw it out.
And I agree with that. I think I just want more information. I want more background about Charlie and his family, you know? And I do agree with you at the end, is like, we're right back where we started, you know? And it would have been nice to maybe see Charlie branch out with some friends his age or have a support system that's not in college or not across the country or whatever it was, you know, because we saw him as this alone person in the beginning. And then we see him as this alone person in the end. And I guess that maybe that's where, like, I wish he had more interaction with his mom, because at least maybe then he wouldn't feel so alone when you're finishing the book, I suppose. So yeah. I agree.
Because, like, he spends a lot of time with his sister, but now his sister's gone off to college, so there's another person gone. So it would have been cool to see, like, him form his own friend group. And he does have that line where, at the beginning, he's like, I'm starting high school freshman year, and I'm really nervous. And then ends with, I'm starting sophomore, and I'm not that nervous. I'm excited about it, which, that's great character development. But I would have liked to see a little bit more long-term, like, friend group-wise. So, but it's okay.
Yeah, we didn't read the book. So one of the things that, you know, I kind of was writing down, just some things that were ruminating in my brain is kind of looking at Charlie's friend group and just seeing that none of these kids know anything about anything. And I think that's very typical. And I think in that situation, it's a pretty honest depiction of what it's like when you're in high school and you have friends and you think you know everything and you think the dramas of your life are really big dramas. And I think that's why it's just such a great coming of age story. It's one of the reasons I love that novel, is just because, you know, we see these kids with all their flaws and with their egos thinking they know everything and all the things that matter to them, whether it's, you know, a person or drugs. You're seeing this snapshot of a group of young people where their whole life is like right there, right? They don't see outside of it. Even though the older ones are going to college, like they are in that moment and they don't see outside of themselves. And I think that is kind of the most honest point in the story, is because like that really is what it's like growing up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's why I think I love that novel, is because it's a pretty honest depiction of kind of how you feel during that time.
I don't want to use this word selfish, but teenagers are very self-centered.
Self-centered, sure.
They kind of forget that, you know, what's going on at the moment is what matters, because their attention spans are pretty much focused on themselves at the time, which is a normal thing for teenagers.
Normal and natural, right, so, exactly.
And this book definitely depicts that very, very well. Yeah, I definitely agree with that statement.
Yeah, so. But that's all I got.
All right, so we're going to do a little rating scale, and we do a little bit different here on the Book Stop. We kind of make up our own thing. I would give Perks of Being a Wallflower 6 nights chain smoking at the local Big Boys out of 10. So, I really like the story, as you just heard. Some things that I didn't like about the story, but I think this was a very good coming of age tale that anybody can really relate to, so...
Awesome.
But what did you think, Alex? What is your rating of this story?
Well, I'm actually going to give it 7 pot brownies from the party Charlie first went to. Kind of
7? Oh my god.
7. You're right. Yeah. 7, so you won't even read it. But the reason being is it's one that's really near and dear to my heart. It's one that I read really early on, so I think I give it an extra pot brownie just because of that. But I think it's just overall a good story, you know. Even if you're an adult, it's a great read just to kind of get a perspective that's a little different, you know. It's one of those things that I think could look very pedestrian, but the more you read it or the more you kind of examine the book, you can get a lot out of it. It's something that is universal. We've all been through experiences that are proverbial coming of age situation. And I just think that it's a good read. It's a quick read. And it's something that it can be really impactful. And I think that when you can step back in to maybe where you were when you were younger, and you have a book that it can kind of get you in touch with that younger version of yourself, I think that it can sometimes be really healing to kind of look back at your own experience and think like, wow, I went through this or I went through that. So it's a good way to kind of like review your own coming of age experience. Yeah. And I think that's really cool that a book can do that.
Yeah, I agree. You kind of get like a blast from the past, like you get kind of chucked back into your teenage years. So yeah, it's a good book.
I just wanted to say thank you for having me on the book stop.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming onto the book stop.
Yes.
I really appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Would love to come back.
Absolutely. We don't have one scheduled yet, but if you guys want to see Alex interact with this episode, we will definitely for sure do another one.
I would love to. I'd love to be here. It was just such a joy to kind of dip my toes in again to the book and get to talk about it with you and your listeners. So yeah,
I appreciate it so much. Thank you again. I hope you had fun. I know I did. I'm going to go watch the movie now.
Yes.
I've been waiting to watch it to after this, so I didn't talk about the movie. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen. Bye-bye.
Thank you for turning the pages with us this week. If you've enjoyed this episode, show your support on social media. Don't forget to turn on your notifications to get a reminder of the next episode. Thanks again for listening to The Book Stop. Bye!